I'm Michael Hernandez. Today on LA Currents, Los Angeles is now on the map for women's sports, and Angel City Football Club is at the forefront. We hear from the team's head of community and marketing about their goals off the field. Later, author, podcaster, and activist Earl Ofari Hutchinson joins Anita Bennett in studio to discuss his latest work on ageism in politics. But first, Councilmember Bob Blumenfield leads the committee that analyzes the city's finances. He talks to Maria Hall Brown about balancing the budget to support critical services and the people who live and work in the city.
Well, he is our council member for CD3, but lately I am sure you've heard his name quite often in regards to the fact that he is chair of the LA Budget, Finance, and Innovation Committee. And budget has been the buzzword around Los Angeles for a few months now. I'm delighted to be joined by Bob Blumenfield. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So much has been touted, brought up, talked about in regards to the LA City budget. And I was hoping that you would be gracious and kind enough to kind of give me a little bit more of a full version, kind of a civics lesson in how this whole thing works.
Happy to talk about it. We just completed the budget process where we take the mayor's proposed budget, and then as a committee, then I lead the committee as chair, we go through that budget line by line. We bring up every department. It's a very long process. The mayor had to make some major cuts. And then as a committee, we kind of go in more with a scalpel and a nuance and try to move positions around, make sure that critical services won't be left behind, that we'll be able to continue our critical services. But really a lot of what we do is that nuance work to make sure that the positions being cut are not going to prevent the services from being rendered. It's important to note that when you're cutting vacancies and not current positions, you're generally saying the level of service you're providing now, you still have the same number of people. We didn't change that. Nobody's job was cut.
Right.
The hard part is the folks that were in, it's one thing if the job has been vacant for 2 years, but it gets a little trickier if the job has only been open for 2 months or 6 months, because that could very well be the natural churn where it takes a while to get someone through the city process and personnel and all the rest. So those positions might have been critical positions, but they were vacant when the mayor sort of did the big sweep, but they might have been a critical position. And that's where we spent the time on the nuance, to try to differentiate those positions.
Right, okay, so why are we in a shortfall? And by the way, what is the shortfall?
Yeah, passing the budget means that we're not in a shortfall, but why is it that we basically have the same amount of money as we did last year and we don't have enough to meet the inflation? And it's for several reasons. One, revenues have just not come in the way that we had anticipated and hoped. They were relatively flat, and some of that is still coming off of COVID. The transit occupancy tax, meaning the tourism money that we get, was relatively flat. Even the property tax didn't go up in quite the way that folks expected. So the revenues were relatively flat. You add on to that a couple of other major factors. One, the COVID dollars from the federal government have basically tapered off. So the infusion that we got to prevent the catastrophe of COVID, that funding is wearing off. The state is also having financial issues, and we get a fair amount of money from the state through pass-through programs. And the state's funding is really determined by capital gains. And so the state experienced a loss in revenue. That trickles down to us as a city as a loss in revenue. And then you add on to that, this is a year that a lot of labor contracts were open, were up for renegotiation. And especially given that we've had a couple of years of high inflation, those salaries have not kept pace. So we had a lot of labor contracts open and with a real call on the council to say we need to raise those salaries so that folks who work in the city can live in the city, so that we don't have labor strife, so that our workers are paid a fair wage for the work that they do. And when we made those decisions about those contracts and provided generous contracts for not just the police, but coalition of unions and others, that was important to do, but it really limited our choices in the budget. And going through that budget process was the consequence of those decisions that were made earlier.
So, CD3.
Yes.
Lots of dynamic things happening over there. We were just talking about Reseda Rising and what an exciting event that was recently after the pandemic. And, you know, how are you feeling about your district, and what kind of progress are you looking forward to?
Oh, there's so many exciting things happening in the district. You mentioned the Reseda Rising. Reseda Rising is actually the term I use for a series of investments, over $100 million worth of investment in Reseda, to take what has been traditionally an underserved community and really lift that community up. And most of those investments are capital and infrastructure, but one of those that I've done every year is really highlighting the community, and that's the art walk. And we just completed that. Thousands of people came. This was the 6th annual one that we've done. We had to stop during COVID, and we pivoted and made it into a mural festival, but it's leveraging the interest in the arts as a sort of a catalyst for more growth and interest in the area. But that's just one piece of the Reseda Rising initiative. The biggest leg of that stool, I guess you'd say, is the ice rink. So I've been working on this for a long time, cobbling together funds, but ultimately we are now in construction for what will be the only publicly owned ice rink in the city of Los Angeles.
Oh my.
We will have a partnership with the LA Kings, and they're going to manage the facility, not just for hockey and youth leagues and adult leagues, but also figure skating and free skating and curling. And there's actually a San Fernando Valley curling team, believe it or not. And it will become a resource. And not just, and I used the word catalyst before, I've always envisioned that project as an economic catalyst for the entire area, because you invest, and it's $27 million into a public structure like that. You know, we're already seeing apartments come up nearby and people wanting to make investments, but you know, as soon as it's up and running, there'll be, you know, coffee shops and restaurants and things, everyone will want to be nearby it, as well as other critical investments in Reseda. For example, the Reseda Theater, which is just down the street from where the rink is on Sherman Way. It has been a derelict theater for the last 20 plus years, but at one point in time it was the center of the valley and the center of Reseda. And I vowed, you know, early on, I said, we're gonna create an entertainment experience there. We're gonna keep the marquee, which is iconic for Reseda. It will be a theater on the top level, and on the bottom level will be a food hall with local food vendors, and it will become a centerpiece for the valley and for Reseda in particular. And then behind that was an empty lot that we're able to make into senior housing, affordable housing, as part of a sort of bigger project deal. And that's already built and that's done, and people are living there. It's wonderful, it's affordable, permanent supportive as well. And in Reseda, we also completed the Reseda Complete Street, which takes all of Reseda, and you can go from Mulholland all the way to CSUN essentially, and you'll have a continuous bike lane.
Wow.
And throughout the district, you now have what's called a complete streets where you have bus bump outs to make bus riding easier. You have bioswales in portions of the parkway. It's made it into a real modern street, the way that streets really should be, with sort of complete amenities instead of doing things in a piecemeal fashion. So that's a major investment. So you can see Reseda is really rising because of the Reseda Rising initiative, and these are just some of the many things that are happening in Reseda. But we also have investments happening all over the district. If you go a little further west in the district, along Sherman Way, you come to Canoga Park. Mm-hmm. And in Canoga Park, we've also really leveraged the interest in the arts, and we've created a Canoga Park Arts District. The centerpiece of that is the Madrid Theater, which is a community theater with a long history. And so we're giving this major facelift. And then with that, so it's not just a standalone theater, we were able to acquire just up the way what's now known as the Tosco Theater, which had been the West Valley Playhouse, which was a small community theater, privately owned, but we were able to acquire it, completely rehab it, and that is now up and running. It is what's known as an incubator, the only one of its kind, where we help incubate community arts, incubate productions, and it'll work in conjunction with the Madrid Theater down the street. So that area is also coming up in a very positive way. The sort of biggest ticket investment recently that everyone's talking about is the Rams. They're building 2 practice fields, mm-hmm. and it's owned by the Kroenke Group, and they not only purchased the Anthem site where the Rams facility is, but they also purchased the old Promenade Mall, which was owned by Westfield and is now owned by the Kroenke Group. So they're now the largest landowner in the district. They have tremendous plans for what's going to happen on those properties. I've got a great team of folks. We're always happy to talk to people about what we're doing, but also issues that they have or ideas that people have to make the city run better, or just if someone's having a problem with any aspect of the city, we want to be there to help. So me or my team would gladly talk to anyone, and you know, that's what this work is about. It's about service and serving the community.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
Behind the Angel City team that hits the field is another squad which builds community relationships and nurtures dreams. Natalia Bilbao spoke to Head of Community and Marketing Catherine Davila at BMO Stadium to find out more.
Soccer, as we know, is very popular amongst little girls. It's even more popular than amongst boys. Now, as girls get older, though, it feels like turning that dream into a real job that pays a living wage is really, really hard. Angel City Football Club of the National Women's Soccer League is working really hard to break glass ceilings and really change the rules of the game. I'm super excited to be today at the BMO Stadium. We're here outdoors in the center of Los Angeles. And I'm here with the Head of Community and Marketing, Catherine Davila. Thank you so much for being here, Catherine.
Of course, thank you, Natalia. It's a pleasure.
So speaking of turning dreams into realities, as part of Angel City FC, did you live the transformation from that seed, that idea, into what it is today?
I would say I'm about as close as it gets without having been, on the team that originally came up with the idea. So I've been with Angel City since October of 2020. We were in COVID, everything was remote, and there were 10 of us who were on every single call, every single meeting, to a time when we have nearly 100 employees.
Oh, wow.
And we have an actual team on the field, which we didn't, for the first year and a half of at least my work with the club. One of the most impressive things about Angel City as an organization is that the values and the goals have sort of remained core to who we are since the beginning. And fundamentally, that is to push for equity by using sport and entertainment. I think there's sort of this shared understanding and desire for this to succeed and to persist. We all have the fear after all the previous women's leagues in this country have failed.
Sol Rosa, specifically here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the LA Sol. We share that desire to make this last. And I think that's what we always come back to. I worked in the youth soccer space and in the adult women's space, really trying to build a pathway so that women could have a relationship with this sport for their lives. So Angel City really has been sort of the pinnacle of that same work, to really form a connection with our city and say to people, this is a place where you find your people. This is a place where you can find meaning and joy. And beyond what's happening on the pitch, which is always the center of what we do, we're going to change the world for the better.
I know that you've worked with Play LA and specifically Girls Play LA, the LA Parks, to create the Soccer Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
What's that about?
So that is one piece of our impact work, and I'll just give the sort of broad strokes of what our impact work is, which is by providing essentials and education. And as we think about essentials, that's everything that somebody needs to sort of think beyond survival and think about dreams and think about thriving. So the way that shows up is really everything from food security work that we do with DoorDash to ensuring with Chevy that 100 people every match have tickets and transportation to our games for free. And then just to making sure that we have safe, reliable places for girls and gender expansive youth to play the sport. The biggest thing when it comes to the impact that we want to have is, I think it's very easy to get spread thin. And what we are really looking to do and have worked hard over the past year and a half to do is to hone in on what really are we best at, where do we have the most credibility and authority, and how can we then make the most real and lasting impact in our city. And so I think what you're going to see from us is expansion and really deepening of relationships with the City of LA Rec and Parks, with GPLA, and I'll just tease that, expanding beyond the Leadership Academy to ensure no and low cost access for girls across this entire city. And obviously one of the key things here and the power just of the existence of Angel City is this whole idea that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so that is one of the reasons it's so important to bring these youth players here, to see the players on the field, to see a president who is a woman, to see, I think it's 70% of our staff is women. We're working on balance, but to see those things is really impactful. We had a group here, and amongst this group of young women, there were a number of Black girls, and they showed up, saw that we had black players on the field, and it was like all the dots aligned, like it clicked, right? Finally clicked. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Right. No, and I love that you have a specific department at the street team, right?
Street team
What's
is
its
a
purpose?
huge part of that. So street team, crazily enough, was formed during the pandemic. We said we have to go out and actually meet people.
Right.
People need to know we exist, because at that point I was getting on the phone and people thought I was coming from the brewery, the Angel City Brewery.
Oh, yes.
They didn't know there was a women's team here. They didn't know there was a women's league in this country.
Wow.
And so it was just like, we have to actually like
educate
be
people
grassroots.
face to face.
Exactly. We're doing upwards of 120 events a year. So it's a lot. It's a lot of days a year. And that's so important to really sort of introduce ourselves in a human way.
Right. And obviously, you know, we can't not talk about the LGBTQ plus community. It's very important on and off the field. What are the things that you're doing to make sure that that community feels represented as well?
It's been a fascinating thing because, of course,
it's not very popular in sports. I mean, and that's the other thing that, I mean, I'm the in-stadium host here at Angel City. This is the 3rd season, and I've never been around so many people who feel so comfortable to fully be themselves. It's such an inclusive atmosphere. How do you make that happen?
That makes me so happy, and I will say we as a club do not take full credit for that. We are here for it. I get emotional about this because it was sort of, you know, the dream from the start. The first conversation I had with Julie Ehrman, she said, "What do you want the stadium to feel like?" And I said, "It should feel like pride every night." It's not just because we want our LGBTQ plus fans and community members to feel at home. It's because there is a sense of joy in expression of who we are, you know, who we are at our core and who we are as real people, and being able to be authentic. You know, it's not about rainbow washing. It's not about selling a t-shirt. It's about really genuinely fostering safety.
It's a real commitment with the community.
Yeah.
No, I love that. O sea, me encanta, Catherine. Bueno, estoy hoy aquí con Catherine Dávila, que es la gerente de comunidad y marketing de Angel City Football Club aquí en Los Ángeles. Estamos en el precioso, impresionante BMO Stadium. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros, Catherine.
Gracias, Natalia. Un placer.
Cuéntame un poquito acerca nos encanta hablar de cómo convertir los sueños en realidades. ¿Cómo fue el proceso de esta semilla, de una idea de crear un equipo de fútbol femenino profesional en Los Ángeles, a lo que conocemos hoy como Angel City FC?
Ya, ha sido algo muy especial ser parte de este sueño, que realmente es mi sueño, es sueño de creo que todas que trabajan por el club. Lo impresionante es que no ha cambiado realmente la misión del club, ¿no? Que es la lucha por la equidad. Y realmente siento que Angel City ha impactado al mundo, que ha cambiado al mundo. Todos ven el valor intrínseco de las mujeres y las jugadoras, del negocio, del deporte femenil y todo eso. Y además, realmente es importante para nosotros no solo hacerlo aquí en el estadio, sino dar oportunidad a chicas por todos Los Ángeles a ver lo que es posible para las mujeres en el deporte. Y por eso también llevamos 100 chicas y sus familias a cada partido. Aquí en BMO les damos entradas para realmente entender lo que es posible. Gran parte de eso es tener el street team, lo que tenemos. Y el street team se trata de irnos por todas partes de Los Ángeles a simplemente decir, hola, somos Angel City, ¿quiénes son? ¿Qué es lo que quieren?
Como tocando las puertas.
Exacto. Es realmente hacer el trabajo, hacer cosas durante todo el año que representan y apoyan a esa comunidad.
Bueno, ya estamos viendo que están ya la gente, los trabajadores a tope, ya listos para el partido que hay hoy aquí en el estadio. Y bueno, yo quería saber, Catherine, ¿cómo se puede la gente mantener informada acerca de todos los programas, eventos que tiene Angel City con la ciudad? How can people get involved and stay updated and like pretty much connect with the club when it comes to all the programs and events happening in Los Angeles?
We love connecting. We love saying hello and embracing our community. Easiest ways, follow us on social media. It's at We Are Angel City on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok. Oh, on X, it's not Twitter anymore. Or TikTok or on LinkedIn, Angel City FC. And then our website, under the community tab, you can always check for events that are coming up. We have volunteer events pretty much every weekend. that we love to have people be a part of, and you never know, a player might also show up.
Interesting tidbit. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for inviting us here to the home of Angel City FC at the BMO Stadium. Gracias, Catherine, por invitarnos aquí al hogar de Angel City en el BMO Stadium.
Gracias, Natalia. Ha sido, pero un placer.
Activist Earl Ofari Hutchinson's latest book originated from a poll which said most people favor an age cutoff for holding office. He talks to Anita Bennett about his timely new book on age and ageism in this election year.
Well, election season is right around the corner, and this year, age is a key factor among voters. Joining us to discuss the issue is longtime Los Angeles activist and writer, Earl Ofari Hutchinson. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Every poll and survey I've seen has shown one thing across the board, almost uniformly. The majority of those of any age group, including many senior citizens, say there should be a cutoff in terms of age when someone can hold a political office.
How do you determine that?
You can't. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the presidential contenders. It's also, we ran into this issue with Senator Dianne Feinstein before she passed away.
Right.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, and now there's even talk about Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor that she has some health problems and maybe she should step down. And then there was Mitch McConnell. So it's a big issue in Washington.
Well, and that's why I say it's developed a life of its own. And my guess is as we go forward, it's going to be more and more of an issue. The founding fathers in the Constitution, remember, they only put age on one thing, the presidency, 35. There's no age on anything else anywhere in the Constitution.
Let's talk a little bit about, you've written a lot of books on race in Los Angeles. What are you hearing in the community since we had that racist recording involving some city council members? What's the status of race in LA right now?
It's a good question. Because some might say it's always changing. Some others might say it looks the same to me. Well, when you really look at LA, it's a polyglot city. I mean, you got everybody from everywhere under the sun that has come to the city. You got every kind of community under the sun here. By that I mean every ethnicity,
yes,
every nationality, every country grouping is in LA. So right away, it's not a melting pot in the sense of everybody's blending together, but I think it is such a diverse community, wide community, big city, big communities, diversity. That leads to two things. One, the potential for problems, conflict, misunderstanding, which is conflict. And the second thing is a big challenge for political officials, public officials, both local, well, especially local, statewide, but especially local. I've always felt that you need to have a broader board of supervisors and a broader city council to deal with all of the different ethnicities, neighborhoods, nationalities. In other words, expanded.
Define broader. More?
More. You need more. Think about it. You got one supervisor that represents an area which is almost as big in some places as many countries, millions of people. So I think, you need to have more of a diverse representation. I think you need to rethink the political process, how it is, because it's been in place so long, it's been frozen. One of the areas that has been somewhat problematic when you talk about race in LA, Black, African American, and Hispanic. And before that, African American and Asian American, more specifically Korean. I haven't really seen the flashpoints that we had a few years ago, between these communities. And I tell people when this question comes up, when you go to a lot of communities like South LA, it's Black and Hispanic, but now predominantly Hispanic. You got people who live side by side. They go to school, they go to the markets, they go to the parks. So you're not finding people constantly in conflict with each other. And by the way, that's a good thing. Yeah, you got gang activity. Yeah, you have some violence. Yeah, you have hate crimes, but you're gonna have that anyway. But I don't just see the city being overwhelmed with that. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm always trying to spin it in a positive light.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is the state of race in LA is pretty good.
I think at this point in time, given the nature of this city, it's about as good or the best that we can hope for. Can there be improvement? Of course. It takes a lot of hard work. There are a lot of community organizations that believe in multiculturalism, that believe in cooperation across the lines. There are a lot of individuals that do that. There are a lot of faith groups in LA that do that. And some elected officials, have been working. All the elected officials all say we got to work together. Some more than others in terms of actually in the trenches and doing that and making that happen. But I think the trends are a good trend going forward. As long as people forget one thing, it's easier to work together than work against.
Oh, that's well said. Easier to work together than work against. We are almost out of time, but I need to ask about the key issue in Los Angeles, homelessness.
Oh.
What are you hearing in the community? Are people noticing improvements? Because that's been a key factor, a key issue with Mayor Bass.
Right. Well, yeah, and it would have to be. You can't be the mayor of this city or an elected official and be an ostrich with your head in the sand. That's got to be the number one issue. Why? Number one, LA is a homelessness capital of the United States. Some might even say almost the world, but definitely we'll keep it here. So that's number one. Secondly, you got to grapple with the problem because it's a quality of life problem. Across the board, it affects everything and affects everybody. My big concern is this. There's been a lot of money, as we know, that's been poured into trying to solve the homeless issue/problem. And as you know, there have been concerns about how effective the spending is when we're seeing even more homelessness on the streets than ever. So I think that's a major challenge for public officials. If you're going to ask the public to be generous with the purse strings, spend money, make sure it's allocated properly and make sure it's being spent effectively.
What else are people saying? Are they saying, I'm seeing more, it's getting worse?
Everybody's saying that. Everybody's saying, it's a terrible thing. Well, partly that and partly because it's been there so long. It's almost like I can walk down the street and see 10,000 encampments and I don't even notice it. Out of sight, out of mind.
Well, the Olympics are coming to LA in a few years, and do you think, put on your crystal ball, do you think that we will see more progress before then?
I think we will. Partly because, remember, you always want, when the Olympics come to a city, any city, you clean it up. You want to make it a showpiece. You have to do that because the whole world is coming here. So you always want to put your best face forward. No one wants to look ugly to the world. And it's Los Angeles. It has a reputation. So I think in part a lot of money will be spent, a lot of cleanup will be spent, a lot of outreach will be spent, a lot of public relations will be done to show the world how great a city LA is. Some of it is puff, some of it is nonsense, but some of it is reality.
All right, well, Earl Ofari Hutchinson, political analyst, author, and activist, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
All right. And that is going to do it for this edition of LA Currents. I'm Anita Bennett. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.